Hello and welcome into the Wednesday, October 12th edition of Fantasy Focus. Today's show is presented by Geico. Switch to Geico, see all the ways that you could save. Daniel, Field, and Stephania here hanging out with you, getting ready for all of the rankings talk that we have today. Get you set up for week 6. We're going to have some injury news from Stephania. Our good friend Liz Loza is going to stop by. We're going to take some social questions and get her thoughts. But first and foremost, we're on to week 6 within fantasy football. But listen, Field and Stephania, we do not just love fantasy football here. We love all fantasy sports here. And in case you were wondering, you can draft fantasy hockey and fantasy basketball teams right now. And we had our fantasy basketball draft last night. I drafted 3 Pistons, so I'm pretty sure I came away with the best team in that league.
I took Cooper Kupp in the 3rd round. Felt right.
Stop
No,
it.
it just felt right. It felt like the only way to go. And my team will probably go undefeated this year.
Probably.
Based off of the past couple of years, it probably won't, but there's a chance. And Daniel, you mentioned fantasy hockey. So here I am last night sitting down, watching TV on the couch, watching The Point on ESPN.
Yeah. Yep.
And who do I see on The Point? One of the great hockey programs now available on ESPN. Who do I see?
I don't know. Who do you see?
Stephania Bell.
Oh, my gosh.
Hanging out with royalty. But my question is, when you're sitting there with Chris Chelios and also Mark Messier, are you the one thinking like, wow, how awesome is it to be hanging out with hockey royalty? Or do you think they're saying, how awesome is it to be sitting with ESPN royalty?
No, they were like, who are you? And I was my buddy Steve Levy hosting the show. Steve Levy, of course, who Monday Night Football host for quite some time, and now hockey is his passion. He's so good at it, and he this was the launch of the season before we had 2 games on our network. I found myself watching hockey last night. I couldn't believe it. I'm like, best time of year. I listened to Timmy Kirkjian and Carl Ravitch call a baseball playoff game, the Braves game, while I was driving in my car. We were talking fantasy football and football during the day. We have our fantasy hoops draft last night, and I get to talk hockey and watch hockey last night too. So great time of year.
It's a great time of year.
Didn't like you and I get to play air hockey on that table they used to have?
Yeah, I think so.
Around the corner from here one time?
Yeah, one time we did.
So Stephania talks about it professionally. You and I like occasionally play air hockey.
No big deal. No big deal.
We need to like rethink
it's really
where
cool.
we stay.
One little
in the
footnote
ESPN.
when you go in that studio. So the Point is in like the old original Sports Center studio. So that was kind of cool to be back in there too, because I was around when that was the Sports Center studio. Well, but in the back when you're getting ready, like where you get mic'd up, and they have a little hockey game like with the little players on it.
Stop.
So it's awesome.
Yeah, the last thing I'll say is that Steve Levy's passion for hockey is so strong that every show that he hosts, he requests that they drop the studio temperature to slightly above freezing.
Yes.
It is legendary. And if you look on Instagram, you can see Mark Messier wrapped up in a blanket, like one of the big studio blankets that they put on the cameras because Levy keeps it.
Is it cold? If you're cold-blooded, you're always warm like a snake,
That's
right?
what it is. Yeah.
I
Okay.
guess.
Steve Levy is cold-blooded.
Yeah.
I love Steve. He's my guy.
Rumor has it.
He has an unbelievable ability to stay warm. When it drops to below 70 in the studio,
listen,
and I'm like
me.
searching for the closest fleece.
Yeah, that's why I was in and out. But
I've heard rumors that late at night, when the studio drops to 55, Steve will actually just drive a little mini Zamboni around the studio just because it just feels good for him.
It's
you know what I mean?
possible, and it's
Clean,
probably
yes.
frozen over at that point.
Yeah,
too.
at that point. All right, let's talk some football. But just in case you love other sports, go check out. We have other fantasy sports that you can play right now. Fantasy basketball, fantasy hockey. It's going to be a ton of fun this year, especially if you're a Pistons fan. All right, let's talk news, Stephania, and we'll dive right in. Actually, I'm going to start with Field here. Field, it looked like we got positive reports from Adam Schefter on Tyreek Hill last night. What's the latest on him?
Yeah, we did. Actually, just before the show this morning, he reported that despite the fact that Tyreek Hill was spotted in a walking boot after the team's loss to the Jets on Sunday, that Tyreek Hill has a good shot of playing this upcoming Sunday. They play against the Minnesota Vikings. As of right now, uncertain who will play quarterback. But Daniel, what would you say is your favorite part of Skylar Thompson's game?
Ooh, probably when he throws the ball to either Tyreek Hill or Jalen Waddle.
As far as is the word ignominious? Yeah.
Mm-hmm.
Does that mean like not well known? No? Okay, whatever it means. I'm trying to say in terms of whatever. Anonymity. Anonymity, that's definitely a word that I know. As far as players that are not well known, where does Skylar Thompson rank in terms of quarterbacks you've never heard of that might start an NFL game on Sunday?
Yeah, it's pretty low.
It's got to be low, right? I'm trying to think of recent court. I mean, I guess Bailey Zappi was real, but like at least like Zappi's a cool last name that like kind of made its way into the pre-draft zeitgeist. It is. It is. But for those unfamiliar.
No, ignominious is deserving or causing public disgrace or shame.
Sorry. Okay, hold on.
I was so far off.
Matthew's not on this show anymore, okay? Come on now.
I was so far off. I did not mean that at all. I was trying to say that Skylar is very little known. So totally my bad there.
Is that what we're going for?
Yeah. My bad.
This Skylar. Is why you don't use words you don't know on live internet.
Good, bad, the. That's really exciting.
I'm going to take us back to the walking boot. Just a point I want to make for all of the people who are doing the quick medical analysis out there. Sometimes teams put players in walking boots just proactively, just to make it be comfortable, because it's more comfortable because the way a walking boot is structured, it has an elevated heel. So it takes the pressure off the foot to some degree by putting you in a more comfortable position. It doesn't always mean that they're out for multiple weeks. So just a little nugget for you to consider going forward.
Daniel wore a walking boot after carrying my spot on the show this past Sunday. So I'm telling you, those things are very useful. Back on track here quickly. We do not know who's going to play quarterback. Obviously, it was a far less efficient operation this past week with Skylar Thompson under center than it was with Tua and than it was for the, I think it was 49 or 63 snaps with Teddy Bridgewater at the end of the Bengals game when Tua got hurt as well. So you have to lower expectations, but if Tyreek Hill plays, you're still playing Tyreek Hill.
All right. Stephania, let's talk about Patriots running backs. Najee Harris looks like is expected to miss multiple weeks. What's the latest with Damian?
When you hear that, it tells you that it's more significant hamstring injury because they know right off the bat. They've already seen enough to know that it's going to be a multi-week injury, probably a grade 2 strain. In week 5, he had 4 carries, 11 yards, 1 catch for 1 yard before he left the game in the first half with that injury. Look, they have a bye in week 10. So it'd be interesting to see what they decide to do if they decide to put him on IR. I know they haven't been placing a lot of players on IR, but if you already know that for sure it's going to be a 3 to 4 week injury, I would think that's at least a possibility.
Field, if you've got a bye in week 10, that means you've got 4 straight weeks of Ramondre Stevenson having this backfield to himself. Is this Ramondre Stevenson to the moon season right now?
Maybe, Daniel. Now, I want to point a couple things out. So I do think that Pierre Strong, 4th round pick, and it's so funny, Daniel. You and I do the First Draft podcast together with Kuiper and McShay.
Yep.
And a couple of the names that those guys loved during the pre-draft process, male specifically, were Bailey Zappi and Pierre Strong. Yep. And now they're both potentially playing a real role for the Patriots as soon as this week. So I'm getting flashbacks to the first draft. Can't wait for that to come back. We miss you, Mel and Todd. But where would you guys rank Bill Belichick in terms of his typical effusiveness of praise of like players in his own team, right? Like sometimes we hear him just wax poetic about like a random like Bengals 3rd string linebacker. Usually makes you think he's like Ray Lewis, right?
Yeah.
But for his own team, he's usually reserved, right?
Yeah. Does not give a whole lot of, it seems like,
he tries to make it about the team. And I understand it, right? He's the greatest ever. I'm not here to challenge his ways. And there's a lot of method to his, not even madness, to his public comments. I'm going to read you a comment from yesterday. Appearing on the Greg Hill Show on WEEI Sports Radio back in Boston, Bill Belichick was asked about how much confidence the team has in Ramondre Stevenson potentially being a 3-down back if needed. This was his answer. Quote, as much confidence as you could possibly have, that's how much we have. Now, to translate that quote, as much confidence as you could possibly have in Ramondre Stevenson being a top 10 fantasy back this week, that's how much we, the collective fantasy football community, has in Ramondre Stevenson. So let's just dive into a couple of factors here. We've seen this guy play. He's just good, right? Like he's a straight up baller. That much is for sure. We saw it last year when he got opportunities. We saw it again this past Sunday when he was one of the best players in the entire NFL for this past week. Beyond that, Patriots play the Browns on Sunday, Daniel. Over the past 2 weeks, the Browns have allowed 440 rushing yards. That is not as a misspeak. It's 440, 220 per game to the Chargers and the Falcons. It's been a disaster for them on the ground. They made a trade for Deion Jones, try to fortify things a little bit, but it's not their strength right now. The Patriots might even be probable that they'll have Bailey Zappi again under center. It would stand to reason, going on the road, playing a team that struggled to defend the run, that you're going to want to run the ball a bunch. Mm-hmm. This is a massive opportunity for Ramondre Stevenson for however long it lasts. I don't know that the Patriots will turn him into Jonathan Taylor or Derrick Henry and he'll handle 90% of the opportunities, but it might be pretty close. And this guy's so good, and that offensive line is so good that if you drafted Ramondre Stevenson for however long Damian Harris is out, you don't just have a set it and forget it guy. You have a guy who could be one of the top 10 running backs in fantasy any given week.
Yep, totally with you there. All right, let's move on, and we are going to talk Russell Wilson's shoulder. Says that he should be ready to play, Stephania. I say for my fantasy bench. What's the latest on Russell Wilson here in week 6?
Fantasy is a different story, but let's just recap this. We haven't really talked about this in detail on the show yet. Russell Wilson was reported by Adam Schefter that he had a partial lat tear. And when the news came out, Adam reported that it was suffered early in the second quarter versus the Raiders. He likely played through it. He did play through it. That was week 4. It was diagnosed after the game. He didn't practice much, was listed on the injury report, ends up playing Thursday night against Indy, and then was talking about the shoulder after the game. He traveled to Los Angeles on Friday, received an injection. That was reported by NFL Network, and with the hope that treatment and rest, he would be able to play through it. Now, let's talk about what a lat strain is and why this is a little bit puzzling, okay? You can make an analogy to hamstring injury here because the lat, big muscle on your back, crosses the shoulder and it attaches through a tendon into the arm bone. If you have a very serious injury, we see it a lot in baseball pitchers. This is more of a baseball injury than football. When it's serious, if the tendon is pulling away from the bone, you don't want to fool around with it. And if it's significant enough, sometimes it results in surgery. You can get healing and scarring down of the tissue, but that takes rest. And it's not something, if the injury is severe, that you mess around with and you try and play through. Now, we have seen a mild lat strain in a thrower. You may recall Dak Prescott, when he was coming off the ankle injury and coming into last season, everybody got concerned because he had a mild lat strain. Do you remember how much conversation there was around Dak's arm and would he be okay? And what was this going to happen with a mild lat strain that was a baseball injury? And he rested for a week or two before he came back. Russell Wilson is talking about playing 10 days later, and not just playing. He was already throwing in practice with no issues. And I would add, Nathaniel Hackett, when asked about his availability after practice yesterday, said, no, he should be ready to play. Like, didn't even hesitate. And then Nathaniel Hackett added later, I've learned in this game, everybody has something that's going on. It's a very, very physical game, as we see week in, week out. He wants to be out there, so we'll do everything to make sure he's as close to 100% as we can. So my interpretation off this, at the very least, is that maybe it's not as severe as it sounded, and whatever he's dealing with the discomfort in his shoulder sounds like something he's going to play through.
Here's the hard part here. It's easy to say bench Russell Wilson because there's so many good quarterbacks in fantasy, except there's not. There really isn't. Right? I mean, think about all the players that are also struggling at quarterback right now. Aaron Rodgers and Matthew Stafford amongst them. I mean, guys that we thought for sure would break out this year, like Trevor Lawrence, right? Like, recently he hasn't been great. Trey Lance got hurt already. You got players that are also hurt right now, like Dak Prescott. So it's easy to say you got to send Russ to the bench, especially because of this injury, which probably, even if he's saying all the right things, I'm going to practice, is probably going to limit his effectiveness somewhat. I still have him as quarterback 12 this week. Like, if you can go grab a Geno Smith and he's available somehow in your league, which based off of our ESPN waiver data, he was going into last night's run of waivers, I would do it. Otherwise, I'm not so sure that there's like a ton of clear-cut better options available either on your bench or on waivers day. It's a weird year for quarterbacks.
Weird year for quarterbacks, but I got to tell you, I don't have a ton of confidence in a guy who scored less than 12 fantasy points in 3 or 4 games.
Nor do I.
I don't think, like Stephania, is him getting this lat problem fixed going to be able to help his decision-making skills, or is that a totally different part of his body?
Well, first of all, I don't think he got anything fixed. Like, you know.
Got it. Okay.
I mean,
Managed.
Got it.
Managing it, like, is it going to be help?
I hear you. Like, this is a tough spot. And I talked about this yesterday. We've talked about this a bunch. Russell Wilson still has a skill set and a team around him of skill players that if things come together, he can be fantastic. However, if you needed to drop him in order to grab someone like Geno Smith, then we're okay with dropping Russell Wilson. But this is not just a run out, like drop him just because,
Hey,
right?
the Seahawks dropped Russell Wilson for Geno Smith. It's working out pretty well for them.
Yes, it is. We'll talk about that a little bit
seriously,
later on
though,
in the
Daniel,
show.
is what I would say is that you mentioned like the fantastic supporting cast and the elite upside. That's where I'm at. No, I'm not convinced of that. Like, I don't think that the best case scenario for Russell Wilson is a guy who has like weekly top 5 upside this year. I think the best case scenario for Russell Wilson now is that he's got like weekly top 10 upside. Like, hey, he could get you
Fingers crossed.
18 to 22 points in a given week. But like the Josh Allen, Patrick Mahomes alien stuff that we're seeing, not going to happen because beyond Russ's own struggles, I'm not so sure the supporting cast is elite. Javonte Williams, gone. Cortland Sutton, you're the man. Jerry Jeudy, like, I know he was a first-round pick, and we want to make it happen, but at some point, you kind of are what you are, right? And inconsistency is his trademark fantasy skill right now. You know, tight end position, they're going to get Greg Dulcich back supposedly as soon as this week. Offensive line's an issue. Like, it's messy right now in Denver.
Really messy. Really messy. All right, let's move on from
Remember
Russell
when there was
Wilson.
all this talk this offseason of how Russ finally had a coaching staff that knew how to maximize him, right? Like, and that, you know, he was going to go to the next level.
Does that feel
Seattle was holding him back, Daniel.
It doesn't feel like the coaching staff right now. Like when Russ, I don't know.
Oh,
I'm
the
not a
operation
quarterback,
looks terrible,
but
right?
like he just doesn't look like when again you highlight how he's not seeing what seems like open wide receivers. That's a thing that feels like a Russ thing. That doesn't feel like a coaching staff. But I'm not a coach. I'm not trying to say that I know
The
better than
grass
anyone
is
else.
not always greener. The jersey's not always greener, right?
That's
It's
right.
hard to get greener than highlight green.
That's
And
right.
maybe throwing a DK Metcalf and Tyler Lockett for the rest of your career wasn't going to be such a bad thing.
All right, last injury update, Stephania. Jalen Warren will continue to do so. Mike Tomlin, on playing Warren Moore, saying that's going to continue to happen, which is not great because we were already having problems and frustrations with Najee Harris.
Yeah, this is not an injury update, which is good. So nothing going on here.
This is a Steelers update.
I'm going to throw a little bit of caution here not caution to the wind. I'm going to just tell people, like, don't worry about this.
Yeah.
If you go back and watch what happened in week 5, Jalen Warren played when the Steelers were getting absolutely blown out by the Bills. I think prior to, it was like the first 13 opportunities for the Steelers running backs. Adam Levitan tweeted this, our buddy Adam, that it was 12-1 Najee over Jalen Warren. Like, no, the concern is not Jalen Warren. The concern is that Najee Harris and the Steelers offense, I don't know. The concern is that the Steelers offense stinks, and it's not allowing Najee Harris to be great.
So let's talk about Najee Harris. Phil, let's jump right into our rankings. Because
Let's get right into it, Dan. Let's do it. Yeah,
this week he's outside the top 20. I see you've got him at RB20. I've got him at RB25, and I actually do want to ask you this because I'm a little bit confused here because last week I thought he was ranked lower against an easier team in the Jets. And now he's getting
5 weeks. That's it. Bye weeks and injuries. There are 4 teams on a bye this week, so you're talking an eighth of the league now no longer available, and of those 4 teams, Josh Jacobs, DeAndre Swift / Jamal Williams. You have no Derrick Henry. So guys that would be unquestionably ranked ahead of him, not available this week. I forget who the 4th team on a bias. My apologies. But
Texans.
Texans.
No
Okay,
Damian
no Damian
Pierce.
Pierce. So you got 4 guys.
Of course, I noticed that.
Yeah.
So, he is
to
basically
25.
RB24, 24, 25. Yeah. So I'm with you, Daniel. I hear why you were asking that question. You're doing this for one reason, Daniel. Running backs stink this year. And I know that I say that like every show now, but I have to keep hammering that point when people are like, I don't want to play Najee Harris. And I'm with you. I don't want to. But how many people made the right moves in the draft where they took Najee Harris with a 1st or 2nd round pick? Like, unless you got Ramondre Stevenson and Damian Pierce and A.J. Dillon in, let's say, rounds 4, 6, and 7 or 4, 6, and 8, you don't have a choice, really. It's so ugly, though. It is so ugly. The path for Najee Harris was clear this year. He led all running backs in catches last season. Not only that, he had 1,200 rushing yards on elite volume and terrible efficiency. 6.7 yards per catch last year for Najee. 3.9 yards per carry last year for Najee. Neither of those is something that you write home about. He is at 3.2 yards per carry this year.
That's bad.
4.4 yards per catch this year.
That's bad.
By the way, on pace for 755 rushing yards, 45 catches, and after 10 touchdowns last year, He has 2 so far this season. So he's on pace for like 6.5. Every regression statistic that could apply is applying right now to Najee Harris. You're playing him because there are so few other options. But while I think it's probably unlikely that there are a ton of people that hit that scenario, there might be some scenarios where all of a sudden Najee Harris is the third option amongst your running backs on your roster. And if you have the ability to sit him, I sure would.
I think that's where I'm at, Field, and we'll move on from this. But I think if I go into a Thursday night football game right now and I come out getting duds from somebody that came out of that game, and I also have Najee Harris as hopefully my flex spot, Najee's kind of like that guy that if I need more upside, he comes out of my fantasy lineup and I slide somebody else in based on how the Thursday night matchup works out.
Again, I just think, and maybe it's like I'm looking at it through the leagues that I am playing in, and I've sort of combed through this just to see, like, of the people that have Najee, are they in this position where they can say, you know what, to the bench for Najee? And the answer is no. It's like, hey, you can sit Najee, you can play like Boston Scott or Eno Benjamin. Do you want to do that? Like, do you want to do that?
Sounds like they should have been better on the waiver wire, Field Yates.
Okay, but you know my point, right? It's just like it's totally so hard right now.
Yeah.
It's so hard.
Totally hear you. Let's talk about another running back. I want to dive into Melvin Gordon taking on the Los Angeles Chargers. Running back 40 coming into the season. Obviously, though, with Javonte Williams gone for the rest of the season, Melvin Gordon is going to be the guy in this backfield. It's not totally his. He's still going to be splitting time with Mike Boone. But from that standpoint, this is the matchup here. I love this matchup for Melvin Gordon. The Los Angeles Chargers are allowing a league-high 5.8 yards per carry. This is something they struggled with last year. They were 5th worst in yards per carry last season as well. It has not gotten better so far here. The last 3 weeks, Chargers, 2 running backs. Week 3, 151 rushing yards and a touchdown to Jacksonville. Week 4, 131 rushing yards and a touchdown to Houston. Week 5, 231 and 3 touchdowns to the Cleveland Browns. At least 130 yards and a touchdown in each of the last 3 games. And now Melvin Gordon gets a chance to be the lead guy in this Broncos offense, where I hope that they run the ball more rather than let Russell Wilson try to cook.
Right.
I think in this situation, this matchup just lines up for Melvin Gordon to be a high-end or a low-end RB2, high-end flex play for your squad because of the matchup with where we're at, in spite of the fact that I don't usually want to trust Broncos offense right now. Where are you guys at on Melvin Gordon?
Nothing much more to add other than the point that you made about, like, maybe they should run the football more this week with Russ dealing with what he is dealing with. And I know that I think the idea of becoming the NFL's MVP one day matters to Russell Wilson. He's never even received a vote. We all know that stat. But if they care about winning most right now in Denver, I think getting back to running the football would go a long way for them, because the passing game ain't working right now. And if I know that, you know, if you're in a shootout with the Chargers, you don't have a choice. But if you can ground control this game early with Melvin Gordon, I do so.
Yeah, one of the problems for Melvin Gordon this year has been ball security.
Yeah.
And I know that's really important to him. And even last week we were talking about this as his chance to step up and prove that he could really get through a game without any issues, and still challenged by it. So this is the week, Melvin.
Love it. All right, Stefan, you guys have one you want to talk about? And Curtis Samuel taking on the Bears this week.
Yeah, now, can you, Barn Burner, Thursday night, set your watch. Commanders, Bears. Yikes. We thought last Thursday.
This is what fantasy's for, though, right? Without fantasy football, we wouldn't watch it.
It's a great point, Daniel.
That is exactly right. That's why we tune in. You know what's funny? I digress for a moment, but Jason Fitz, our friend Jason Fitz, had said, for everybody complaining about this Thursday night game, it's still like, you know, football is like pizza. You're so glad you have it. Or he was saying you're so glad you have football because it's something to watch. You would have been clamoring for it when it was the summer and there was no football. And Randy Scott, another good friend of ours, said, it's like pizza. You want it no matter what. And I said, Thursday night's game was like soggy pizza with every topping I hate on it.
Yep.
That was my take on it. So
I'm with
what
you.
will this Thursday night's pizza look like?
Hopefully
I'm
better.
hoping.
Jeez, because the Bears wearing their orange helmets.
Hey!
Oh, okay. I'm hoping Curtis Samuel is going to deliver.
Ringing endorsement.
Not exactly. Curtis Samuel, look, the Commanders have a couple injuries at the wide receiver position. Jahan Dotson missed last week because of a hamstring injury. We talked about how he hadn't missed before, and he is not likely to play on a short week, I am thinking. And then you've got Diami Brown, also limited Monday and Tuesday because of a groin injury. Curtis Samuel.
Ouch! My finger.
Yes. Well done, Daniel.
Sorry.
Curtis Samuel. 6 receptions on 8 targets for 62 yards against the Titans in week 5. led the team in targets for the 5th straight week. Here's the thing. He's catching the ball a lot. It's just that the passes are really, really short. So there's not a lot of volume in terms of air yards. He had touchdowns the first 2 weeks and then nothing since. He also carried the ball in the first couple of weeks and hasn't had any running plays since. I'm hoping that they're going to get back to a little bit more of that, get Curtis Samuel in the end zone, maybe some more diversity on the plays for him. But I think he's the strongest receiver available to them coming into this game. So hopefully you get something out of Curtis Samuel.
I am with you on hopefully because I have a lot of Curtis Samuel. I loved that early season target share. He was getting a ton of volume. I want to see a return here in week 6. All right, we're going to talk about some more ranks here in a second. But first, Stephania, go ahead and help us take care of some bills.
I'll do that, Daniel. And Geico asks, how would you love a chance to save some money on insurance? Of course you would. And when it comes to great rates on insurance, Geico can help. Like with insurance for your car, truck, motorcycle, boat, and RV. Even help with homeowners or renters coverage. Plus, add an easy-to-use mobile app, available 24-hour roadside assistance and more, and Geico is an easy choice. Switch today and see all the ways you could save. It's easy. Simply go to geico.com or contact your local agent today.
Make Little Caesars the official pizza sponsor of the NFL part of your game day. Order online during their Pizza pregame 1 hour before NFL games and get ready for some football and fun. Choose your favorite Little Caesars pizza or pick up the toppings you crave. Either way, you win. And speaking of winning, everyone scores with convenient delivery or their in-store pizza portal pickup. So grab some friends and enjoy a few slices during the tastiest hour before kickoff. Pizza. All right, let's pick it up with some more rankings talk here. And Stephania, let's talk David Montgomery taking on the Washington Commanders.
I can't stay away from this game.
You got to stay for this Thursday night
this game. So much fantasy goodness in this game. But actually, David Montgomery has been delivering for fantasy purposes. Remember, he ended up with that knee and ankle injury, left week 3 early, sat out week 4, and then looked good in week 5. 12 carries for 20 yards, 4 catches for 62 yards. Certainly heavily involved, as we know he will be, and we know Chicago is going to continue to run the ball. Run heaviest offense in the NFL on roughly 50% of their plays. And because we know that David Montgomery has been able to catch the ball, it's interesting, little nugget that Thirsty Kyle gave to me, is that Washington has allowed a league-high 3 touchdown receptions by running backs. So maybe we get a pass-catching touchdown from David Montgomery in this game. But I like David Montgomery this week. Great opportunity against Washington. And like I said, you know that Chicago is going to run the ball.
Yeah. Pass-catching touchdown means that Justin Fields will be throwing the ball, so I'd be stoked about that. Stephania, I'm going to talk about Geno Smith.
Tell me more, Daniel.
It is time to trust Geno, quarterback 6 on the season. All right? Last 3 weeks, Geno has averaged almost 25 fantasy points per game. This week, he gets the Arizona Cardinals at home, who have given up the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. At this point, we all prefer Geno's culinary skills to Russ's. Seattle was tired of the hot dog mac and cheese, and now they're getting something delicious. With Geno. You can take him and put him right into your fantasy lineup. I'm good for you for Geno Smith to be a starter, not just this week, but until I see things change. This defense is really bad. This offense is going to have to keep throwing. He's still got 2 good wide receivers. I'm in on Geno Smith for the foreseeable future, given bye weeks coming up.
From your lips to God's ears, Daniel. The only thing I would add here is if Geno did not get added in your league on waivers last night, and I believe going into yesterday, it was like 33% of leagues he was rostered. If he's not rostered yet in your league, go grab him if you have Josh Allen. Josh on a bye next week. Geno and Ideal fill in there. I love him. I'm so happy for him. I'll take it away from here, Daniel, because the next player I want to talk about was Gabe Davis, who the last time we saw Gabe Davis against the Kansas City Chiefs at Arrowhead Stadium, he had 4 touchdowns. And I wonder so week 1, awesome for Gabe Davis. Week 5, awesome for Gabe Davis. He had the injury in between, missed 1 game, and then played against Miami, played all those snaps, little production, and then another bad week in between. We always use Mike Williams as the poster child for if you have him, you play him. You know that the good days are going to be sandwiched around or by bad days, or vice versa. Bad days will be sandwiched by good days. I don't know that Gabe Davis is quite as volatile as Mike Williams, only because this is Gabe's third year in the league. It's Mike's sixth year in the league. Just a smaller sample size. And I think that if one of them were to become a guy that you trust week in and week out, might actually be Gabe Davis, even though it's pretty close. But the bottom line is that I think what Gabe Davis has shown us in 4 games this year is that, like, if you have him, you just have to play him.
Yeah.
Like, and I get it.
I really think this is the injury. If you go back and you look at what happened during the week, you remember there were videos where he was leaving the field. He was still limping. He was running just very soft routes in practice. The ankle was not 100%. I mean, he was playing with an ankle that I just don't think he could be as effective in the game. And maybe that's why they weren't targeting him as much. Yeah. Maybe it's part of why he wasn't as productive. He was better in week 4 than he was in week 3, and then he was really, really good in week 5. So if truly that was the case and it was behind him, I think you're seeing a reflection of that.
I'll take it. He's averaging 28.1 yards per catch this year, and only 11 catches in 4 games. I get that. So there's risk, but the upside is just so ridiculously ridiculous that he is Mike Williams. He's like Mike Williams' cousin. I don't know if they're actually cousins. They probably aren't. We probably know that by now. But he is the cousin of Mike Williams in terms of fantasy usage. He plays, you live with it. And I get it at wide receiver. There are more options than at running back, so you might have different considerations. Like, I'm favored to win big. I just want that 10 or 12 points, and you have a Jacoby Myers on your bench, you play him. But if you have Gabe Davis and you can, like, ride the wave, or ride the roller coaster, good things are going to happen on occasion. And those good things might be, like, win you your week, win you your matchup, tilt you towards the playoffs, because he's just that talented.
Heck yeah, he is. What about on the other side of that game field? Because we watched Clyde Edwards-Helaire be a top 15 running back. Yeah. The Chiefs to get the Bills should be an awesome one for us this week.
Yeah, it's a tricky one here. So, like, I think that Clyde Edwards-Helaire is still in this territory where everybody was expecting the come down game, right? Because he was breaking models and scales and Mike Clay's brain for the first 4 weeks of the season.
Really efficient, right? Couldn't keep it up.
And he had 6.5 fantasy points this past week. And it easily could have been 12.1 because he had a touchdown that was overturned upon review. And it was one of those plays where, like, he was clearly short of the end zone, but by, like, I don't know, 5 inches.
Yeah.
And if he's a little bit taller or just reaches a little bit further, are we talking about him differently this week? My answer is probably not. I think that while there are some negative indicators with Clyde Edwards-Helaire, most specifically that Jerick McKinnon is going to continue to play a role, and there's a chance that Isaiah Pacheco plays more of a role down the stretch, he's at least getting opportunities at or near the goal line. And given how good the Chiefs' offense is, he could, and we said this is a rookie and it wasn't right, he could just fall into the end zone 10 total times this season. So he is a low-end RB2, strong flex consideration for me this week.
I think that's fair. All right. IBM Watson Insight of the Week is informed by IBM. We are talking high floor options for week 6. IBM's safest top 20 options in terms of the least amount of downside when compared to projections. And we're going to start with Terry McLaurin, 8th safest, taking on Chicago tomorrow night, Thursday night football. Here's the thing for me on Terry McLaurin.
Well, I got some beef after this. You go first.
You go. Well, I'm ready for this. He's been a top 30 wide receiver only 3 times. 3 out of 5 weeks, which is not terrible, but he's yet to finish better than wide receiver 24. We know how bad it has been. Here is the only underlying thing that I think is positive for me. He's 3rd in the NFL in routes run. He is 5th in snaps at the wide receiver position. He's on the field and in a spot to have opportunities all the freaking time. They are just not getting him the football. I am still going to trust him as a lower end flex play for me this week because of the amount of volume that you get with Terry McLaurin, but I don't feel great about it, Field.
I was going to say, when we say safe, does that mean like we can safely put him on the bench, Stephania?
Well, listen, he gets the air yards that Curtis Samuel doesn't get, but he doesn't get the targets. Like, the volume of work is not there. It has to be a big play. He's big play dependent right now.
Yep.
And this is not a Terry McLaurin thing. He is stone cold certified beast.
We've talked about it. He's F1.
We love Terry, but the way the offense is running right now, it's not Terry's year. And even without Jahan Dotson last week, and likely again this week, as Stephania's already mentioned, like, it's 76 yards and 5 catches last week.
Yep.
Like, end zone. It's a great place for Terry McLaurin to be. I'm not confident he'll be there.
I'm hoping he rights the ship this week. But I'm with you, Field. There's a lot to be.
That was wide receiver 39.
A lot to be worried about. All right, let's talk about Michael Pittman, 17th safest wide receiver this week, taking on the Jacksonville Jaguars. He was wide receiver 5 in week 1. He has not been a top 25 wide receiver since. I am still trusting him here as a low-end wide receiver 2 or a high-end flex play for me because, Field, he's just too good at this game. I'm trusting him for, like, I'm not at a point where I'm starting to be nervous about Michael Pittman still getting his target share. That team has struggled a little bit, but he's still in a spot where he's Michael Pittman. He's in my starting lineup here in week 6.
Common thread here, right? These are teams that can't finish drives right now.
Yeah.
They're a low-scoring offense because they have not been able to finish. I think they're the lowest scoring offense in the NFL right now, Daniel.
Gosh, that's
But
terrible.
he's got 9 targets per game this year, so yes, I still like the talent enough for Michael Pittman and the opportunity there. While we did see more from Alec Pierce last week, it's not like they have a dominant number 2 wide receiver or tight end. So I am still confident enough in Michael Pittman to have him in my lineup.
Heck yeah. All right, and last one, Stephania, I'm going to come to you with this. Dalvin Cook, 20th safest, taking on Miami. He's a top 10 running back for us. And obviously we know he's been dealing with a shoulder injury. That's something that's not going to go away. He's going to manage it, it sounds like, for the rest of the season. Any trepidation on Dalvin Cook after the way that he played in week 5?
No, and we talked about this on the show yesterday, just that his snap share has gone down and Alexander Madison's has gone up. And I think part of that was due to the fact that he was coming off the subluxation of his shoulder when he first came back, not really as involved. But I think this is an offense that can carry each of them. And as we mentioned yesterday, Dalvin Cook's still getting the work primarily in the running game, but also in the passing game. He doesn't really appear limited to me. So I'm not concerned at all. Dalvin Cook, you're starting.
Yeah, very much used in the red zone as well. He is a big option for that team. All right, let's talk about some bye-week fillers. Derrick Henry, DeAndre Swift, Jamal Williams, Josh Jacobs, Dameon Pierce. They are all on bye this week. We're looking for one running back outside the top 25 that you are looking to be able to start if you need someone this week. Field, I'm going to start with you. Which running back are you looking at as far as a bye-week fill-in?
So people that are out there listening, the assignment was find a running back, not in the top 25, that you like this week, with 4 teams on a bye and 4 great running backs that we just discussed. Pickings are slim, so if you don't like my pick, go find a better one yourself. A.J. Dillon, that's my answer. And it was a bad week last week. He had 0 targets. He had 6 touches total. However, here's why I'm optimistic. Weeks 1 through 4, the Packers gave him 16.5 touches and 3.5 targets per game. Green Bay is a 7, maybe a 7, even 7.5 point favorite against the Jets on Sunday, playing back at Lambeau Field. The Packers threw the ball 39 times last week. After the game, even Aaron Jones himself was like, give me or AJ the ball when we've got 3rd and 2 and we miss on back-to-back plays, and it's one of the deciding factors in the game. The Packers may want to throw the football. They may need to throw the football against better offenses later in the season, whether it's Tampa, whether it's whoever in the NFC, Philadelphia, etc. But for now, they got to be a meat and potatoes team. And the way they do that is run the freaking football with A.J. Dillon and Aaron Jones. I think that's the case this week. They get back on track in that regard. I think A.J. Dillon has a solid week.
I like that, Field. And I am right there with you. I hope that happens because I have a lot of A.J. Dillon in my hero RB drafts. All right, Stephania, let's talk about a running back that you like this week as a potential bye-week fill-in for your starting lineup.
I just want to make a note about the assignment because I'm a very follow the directions kind of girl.
You are?
I was told, in the middle tiers.
Oh, okay.
So I didn't get the below 25. So Kareem Hunt comes in ranked at 24, 24, and 21, and I say it's close enough. And he would have been out of the top 25 if all the others weren't on bye. So there.
That
That's
works.
my justification.
Love it.
And here's the reason why. Because consistency at least provides you with a safe floor at the position when you're desperately looking for that second running back to put into your roster. And Kareem Hunt has at least 8.8 fantasy points in every week. He has at least 12 touches in every single game. He's involved in the passing game in addition to the running game, so that's going to be more beneficial for you at the running back position. Let's say your number 1 is Nick Chubb. He's going to run the ball beautifully, but not as many passes caught. Cleveland, the second heaviest run team in the league. Who's the heaviest? The Bears.
Wow.
So Cleveland's going to run the ball a ton. New England allowing the 10th most yards per carry to running back. So good opportunity for Kareem Hunt here. I think if you're looking for a second running back because somebody is on bye this week, you could do much worse than Kareem Hunt.
Yes, you could. All right, and I'm going to talk about one player. Talked about him really quickly yesterday, and that's Travis Etienne taking on the Colts. Touches the last 2 weeks. Travis Etienne has 21. James Robinson has 20. This is a little bit more of a backfield by committee than it was to start the season with the way that they are splitting touches. However, Travis Etienne has not been someone that you have trusted as a flex play up until this point. And now with the increased usage that he is getting and the fact that we have entered into bye weeks, he makes his way into the top 25 for Field, top 23, top 22 for Liz. I mean, we have him at a spot where if you need to play him as a high-end flex this week, he is in line for you to be able to contribute for your fantasy team. Still interested to see how this backfield works out because James Robinson is not going to go away. But with the backfield usage that we have from Travis Etienne, you like him as a bye-week fill-in for your Week 6 roster.
You know how on social media people are always like, he or she understood the assignment?
Yep.
The two of you, not understanding the assignment.
What?
I know Stephania defended her own honor, but top 25, you're like, Travis Etienne's my RB23,
No.
Daniel.
Okay, all right, let's do this. Who is one running back you usually rank outside the top 25 at the position that you're penciling in if you need? Now, do I rank Travis Etienne outside the top 25 normally? Yes.
I don't know.
I
don't have
also
ESPN
did not
minus
get
plus
the top
anymore.
25. I just want to point that out.
How dare you?
Anyways.
Not to mention, by the way, Field, weren't you the one that said running backs stink this year?
They do stink.
This was the hardest part of my homework last night.
Yes,
was
I
finding a
know.
running back I
Literally.
could actually promote because every time I picked one, I was like,
Well,
no,
once I got past
wouldn't want to start
A.J.
him.
Dillon for
Nope.
Field, I
No
didn't want
thanks.
anyone past that. Honestly, because I was totally with Field. It's just sort of a wasteland. How do you feel confident?
Daniel texted me. He was like, is Barry Sanders applicable for this exercise? Yes,
Listen.
Barry's always in play.
Always in play.
You know what the funniest part is? So Mike Clay sets a default run of projections. And when we do our rankings each week, we all have access to the same system. And so once he inputs those, it'll have so players will be ranked 1 through 25 at quarterback, 1 through 50 at running back, wide receiver, etc. And before he does that, though, the system, I don't know how it's pulling, but it pulls these names in like the most arbitrary of order. And for some reason, the number 1 ranked quarterback before the projections go in every single week is Brock Rudder.
No, it is.
It's like Vinny Testaverde is like 3rd. It's like Steve Berline is 9th. It's the most random collection of names. So I always text Mike if I get in there before he puts his projections in there. I'm like, Mike, once again, Brock Rudder topping your quarterback list this week. Can you think a little bit more outside the box?
Please.
We're going to come back in just a minute here. But first, I want to tell you, you know what I think happens is Mike sometimes has a couple too many Miller Lights.
That's
and
what
he
it
has
is.
Brock Rudder
Miller
signed
Lite
up
Mike
as his
is
number
our
1
favorite Mike,
quarterback.
though.
That's right. And football season brings many traditions back that we know and love. Touchdown dances, the pick six, game-winning field goals. You know, the Lions breaking Daniel's heart. Watching it all with friends and a cooler full of Miller Lite makes it all worth it. The action on the field is reliable year after year. Pair it with the most reliable light beer every Sunday or Monday or Thursday or late in the season Saturdays. It's game time for Miller Time. Miller Time means good friends, great beer, and football all Sunday long. What could be better? Since 1975, Miller Lite has been a mainstay in the stadium, at the tailgate, and in your fridge. No matter how your team plays, it's the beer that's always a winner because of the beer drinkers' light beer. With only 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12-ounce serving, your only concern is that the next third down conversion. And, well, Daniel's buying Lions starting to buy this week, so that's good. So they're going to be okay as far as third downs are concerned.
good.
Anyway, Miller Lite tastes like beer because if you're a beer lover, you don't want watered-down flavor. You want the original light beer. Football season brings back the big hits, so reach for the biggest hit of them all, Miller Lite. You can find Miller Lite pretty much everywhere beer is sold, or go to MillerLite.com/FFF for delivery options near you. It's Miller time. So celebrate responsibly. Miller Brewing Company, Milwaukee, Wisconsin. 96 calories and 3.2 carbs per 12 ounces.
All right, Field Yates, and every single week on Wednesday we go through and do a Little Caesars pizza preview. Why don't you break that down for us right now? Because I'm starting to get hungry. Could use a little bit of pizza myself.
Yeah, the Little Caesars preview is brought to you by Little Caesars. It's game day with Little Caesars, the official pizza sponsor of the NFL. Pizza. I like doing that.
I like that part.
So Thursday Night Football, as we have told you, we have the Commanders going to Chicago to play the Bears. And we were talking about how like quarterbacks have been bad this year. Carson Wentz actually had 3 reasonable finishes this year. The problem is he had 2 real duds beyond those 3 really good weeks. But I want to see, are we going to get good Carson Wentz on Thursday night? Are we going to get bad Carson Wentz on Thursday night? I tend to think like pretty good for Carson Wentz on Thursday night against the Chicago Bears. He is a possible streaming option if you've got Aaron Rodgers or Russell Wilson or Matthew Stafford, whoever it may be. On Sunday, not Lamar Jackson. We have Josh Allen and Patrick Mahomes. Instant classic. The last time that these two teams played, Chiefs won 42-36 in overtime. They were the top 2 fantasy quarterbacks last week, were Mahomes and Allen. The over-under is 54 points. I'm not saying you have to start every player in this game, but I'm also telling you that you don't not have to start every player in this game. Play Chiefs, play Bills. I can't wait for the rematch come Sunday afternoon. And then on Monday, we've been talking about it. Are the Broncos going to figure it out? Like, will Russell Wilson actually be a fantasy starter this season? Is anybody beyond Cortland Sutton and Melvin Gordon startable on this Broncos offense? Those are questions that we still don't have the answers to. Maybe Greg Dulcich gets involved in the passing game come Monday night. It's going to get late early for Denver if they don't take care of business on Monday night in Los Angeles. And Daniel, I'm not totally sure that they will.
I'm not sure that they will either. I got a few best ball teams that could use a Greg Dulcich touchdown, though. I wouldn't be upset about that. All right, we're going to welcome in our friend Liz Loza in just a second. But first, the NFL action is in full swing at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. We're talking touchdowns, big plays, and even bigger wins. New customers can bet just $5 on any NFL team to win, and they get $200 in free bets if you do. Check this out. In addition to the usual stepped-up bets, everyone can boost their winnings with DraftKings stepped-up same-game parlays. To make things even sweeter, you can throw down on stepped-up same-game parlays once per game day, all season long. Download the DraftKings Sportsbook app now. Use promo code FFF to get $200 in free bets if your team wins when you place a $5 bet on any football game. That's code FFF only at DraftKings Sportsbook, an official sports betting partner of the NFL. 21 plus in most eligible states, but age varies by jurisdiction. Gambling problem? Call 1-800-GAMBLER. In Tennessee, call or text Tennessee Red Line 1-800-889-9789. In New York, call 877-8-HOPE-NY or text HOPE-NY 467-369. Bonus issued as free bets. 1 early win token issued to opt-in. Moneyline bets only. Deposit and wagering restrictions apply. Eligibility and terms at DraftKings.com/football terms. All right, and Liz Loza, it is so good to see you here as we do every single Wednesday. And Liz, I'm really excited about this first segment because it's called Players I Like More Than You in Week 6, which I think is just fun. A little bit aggressive. I feel like you're coming at me directly, but I'm ready for this. Go ahead and bring it. Rondale Moore against the Seattle Seahawks. Actually, I agree with you on this one. Rondale Moore against the Seattle Seahawks. Why do you like Rondale Moore this week in Week 6?
Isn't it lovely to see a speedster healthy and being utilized properly? When he is on the field in the right places and his body is all together, he is so fun to watch. He managed a snap share above 90% last week, ran 35 routes, and drew 8 targets. The production was fantastic. 7 catches for 68 yards. And I think the volume will be there again, at least for one more week until Nuke Hopkins comes back, right? But on Sunday against the Seahawks, this game has a projected over-under of 51 plus. I mean, if I'm looking at Seattle over the past 2 weeks, I'm going to hammer the over on that one. And the Seahawks are allowing a league-high 7.1 yards after the catch per reception. 4.3 speed in Rondale Moore. It is going to be hard for me to restrain myself and not push him inside my top 25.
I think I'm with you. Rondale Moore, especially without Nuke still being there. Like you said, we get one more week without that to see how this turns out. And this game should have a ton of points scored in theory, right? These Cardinals, I said in talking about Geno Smith earlier, they've allowed the 8th most fantasy points to quarterbacks. If Geno continues to be able to cook, then hopefully on the other side, they are slinging it around, and Rondale Moore is a part of that. I'm excited about this next one. Let's talk James Cook, running back from the Bills, taking on the Kansas City Chiefs. Why is James Cook on this list, Liz Loza?
Well, first, let me start with a little fun fact to contextualize
I love fun
things.
facts. Yeah.
Well, they're fun, right? And they're facts, so yay. 58 running backs have more carries than Cook. Only 5 of those 58 have more runs over 24 yards.
Wow.
The rookie has skills, right? And they were good enough that in a blowout last week against the Steelers, the Bills were like, all right, let's give him some run. Let's see what he can do. And to Cook's credit, he made the most with those opportunities. He averaged 7.8 yards per carry. Now, I know that's a noisy stat and not something you can hammer down, but it aligns with what we knew about him. I think this coming week, he's going to do more than just carry the rock, though, because the other thing we knew about Cook, what made him so special coming out of college, other than he was Dalvin's little brother, was that he could catch the ball, and not just because he had good hands, but because he actually knew how to run routes. Jamison Crowder, obviously on IR. Isaiah McKenzie, still in concussion protocol. I think that there is going to be, because Cook did such a good job in a role as a rusher, some allowance now for him and a need for him, especially in this matchup that Field just mentioned has an over-under of 54, to do some catching. Also, if I'm looking at the Chiefs, the Kansas City Chiefs have allowed the most receptions to opposing running backs. That is right in the bullseye of what Cook can do for this Buffalo Bills team.
Yeah, I feel like he's the kind of guy that if you are at this point in the season, right, he's available in about 66% of leagues. If you grab him now, this is one of those rookies on a high-octane offense that potentially towards the end of the year when things break out, like it's that league-winning type potential, and it may never come to fruition, right? We can't predict that with every single player. But a lot of what you're describing leads up to that kind of like, hey, if you want to look for correlation, it could definitely happen. And I understand liking James Cook this week. You know they want to get him involved. I'm excited to see what they can do with him because I got too many shares of James Cook. I just love the kid, and he's really exciting this year. All right. I want to argue with you on this next one. Do you mind on that?
Oh, okay.
George Kittle taking on the Atlanta Falcons. You have him at tight end 3. I'm not sure as though you've watched very many San Francisco 49ers games this year, Liz, because George Kittle has been awful. I know you've watched a ton of 49ers games. I'm not taking a shot at you, but he's looked so bad. How do you have the confidence to put him at tight end 3? Because I don't have that in my heart right now.
Well, so we know that George Kittle is a multi-hyphenate talent, and we also know that he's coming off of an injury and he's been shaking off rust. Since his return, he's on the field all the time. This is the confounding part about George Kittle, right? He has a snap share of nearly 95%. The problem for fantasy, and I think this is what you're alluding to, is that he's not running a whole lot of routes. He's doing other stuff that is very beneficial from a real football point of view, but not necessarily from a fantasy POV. He's only the tight end 11 in route participation. He's running just over 21 routes per game. However, since returning, the percentage of, and this is where we got to get a little bit granular, the percentage of dropbacks in which he's run a route has gone up every single week. In week 3, it was 56%. In week 4, 75%. In week 5, over 90%. We like to see that climb, and this matchup, I've been talking about it for 2 weeks straight. People still want to sleep on tight ends versus the Falcons. If you slept on Cade Otton, sorry about it. George Kittle is going to go ham in this particular matchup against the Falcons that have allowed the 4th most fantasy points and the 3rd most receiving yards. What does George Kittle do? He rumbles after the catch.
Wow.
To opposing tight ends.
Liz, have you made a board bet on this show yet? Do you know what board bets are for Fantasy Focus?
I heard you guys scream about get it on the board, get it on the board, but I don't. I just like kind of popped my IFB out for a second. It was like, oh, they're putting something on a board.
That's fair. So you've got him at tight end 3 for this week. I've got him at tight end 8. I will say that George Kittle is not a top 6 tight end in week 6. And I want to do a board bet with you.
Put it on the board.
Well, you've got it now. Now you say Travis Kelce will be a top 6 tight end in week 6. And then we pause and then we both scream, put it on the board really loudly.
Oh.
Okay. All right. So
Okay. Do it again.
George Kittle will not be a top 6 tight end in week 6, Liz.
George Kittle will be a top 6 tight end in week 6.
Put it on the board.
You're wrong. Put it on the board.
Perfect. That's what we wanted. The delay counts. I mean, it's all right. We're doing that remote. First board bet of the season for you, Liz. Stoked about that. All right, we'll see how that one works out. Unfortunately, though, you make a lot of really good arguments about George Kittle, and I feel like I'm going to raise him up a little higher than tight end 8 now. We'll see, though, if, to your point, if Cade Otton can get it done. I got to believe that maybe George Kittle has some skills in him. All right, let's move on and talk some social questions here. Liz Loza. Matt wants to know, full PPR leagues, is Aaron Jones a buy low right now here in week 6?
Oh, man, I have so many shares of A.J. Dillon. I'm jealous of anybody who's got Aaron Jones. Yeah, I mean, I guess so. I mean, he's gone over 75 yards in every single game this season, but one, I think, actually. And he had like 3 red zone looks. I know that they didn't amount to anything in London, but London games are always a little bit screwy.
I don't know if he's
I think
buy low is the
I
right
would buy.
term. I would buy.
Yeah, I would like to buy low on Aaron Jones. Like, if you can buy low on Aaron Jones, why aren't you?
I'm with you. It's the idea of, I guess you maybe can. Running backs are bad, and this is the problem, right? I'm looking at his box score. 10 fantasy points week 1, 32 in week 2, 5.7 in week 3. He took on Tampa Bay, right? Tough Tampa run defense. 14.5 against New England, 10 against the Giants. I mean, other than that big boom game against Chicago, he hasn't topped 15 fantasy points, but he's still running back 13 on the season. This just comes back to like how bad running backs have been this year. Only one game over 15 fantasy points. He's still a top 13 running back on the year. So I don't know how low you can buy on Aaron Jones just because of how bad the other running backs have been. But if you want to try to take that and find a way to be able within your trade talks to say, hey, Aaron Jones, it's been tough for him and I don't think it's going to get better. You can do that. I think it'll be tough to buy low on Aaron Jones, but all in on trying to acquire him.
Agree, and I like his matchup this week too against the Jets.
Yeah,
I'm not worried about their run defense, and I think the Packers are favored by 7 opening up, so game script should work in his favor there too.
Jay Garrity 36 wants to know: do we like T. Higgins or Mike Williams more rest of season?
Oh, this is actually weirdly close because of the circumstances that have hit. How about whichever one stays healthy, whether it's Mike Williams' back or T. Higgins' ankle is the one I would like.
Here's the thing. Can you deal with the ups and downs of Mike Williams? Because that's what it's going to be the rest of the... Although, T. Higgins, I would have thought was more consistency, but there's been ups and downs with that Bengals offense too.
Well, I think Mike Williams is going to stay up as long as Keenan Allen stays sidelined, and a hamstring issue, a soft tissue problem, is one that is much less predictive than a tear or a break. So, and given Keenan Allen's age, I still think overall on balance, though, I'm going to lean towards T. Higgins because, here it is. I think this is what you're alluding to. Mike Williams will produce if Keenan Allen is out of the lineup. T. Higgins can produce even with Jamar Chase in the lineup. So give me Higgins.
I'm with you there. I like that. I like that. All right, Brian wants to know, how concerned are we about Jalen Waddle? Is he dependent on Tua playing, or are the other 2 games that he's had outliers? I just want to say outliers, but I'll let you weigh in.
I feel like we talked about this on Monday's pod with Mike Clay. I'm not terribly worried. I don't love a groin issue, but I believe that Mike McDaniel, coming from the Kyle Shanahan tree, is capable of scheming up a quarterback in a very friendly way. And I don't think anyone anticipated Teddy Bridgewater going out on the Dolphins' first drive of the game. So, I don't think Mike McDaniel had anything schemed up for Skylar Thompson. We're not going to see Skylar Thompson. So the upside that Waddle allows makes me very nervous about abandoning him at all. I think this is also, you want a high ceiling player? Well, sometimes things happen, but I'm going to keep ranking him inside my top 12 to 15 without much hesitation, at least for this week.
I'm with you there. I agree with you on that one. Mikester 585 wants to know, Romeo Doubs or George Pickens for the rest of this season? I'm looking really quickly at their snap share. Romeo Doubs has played 234 snaps. George Pickens has played 230 snaps. They are literally on the field all the time right now, but I would still rather have the one that's in an Aaron Rodgers-led offense where he is a top 2 wide receiver, not someone that's sort of buried behind Deontay Johnson and the rest of those guys there.
I totally agree. Give me the one that's attached to the future first ballot Hall of Famer instead of the rookie finding his way.
Yes, agreed. All right. Asterisk 17 wants to know, Breece Hall or Josh Jacobs moving forward? How much of Josh Jacobs is going to be able to continue this unbelievable streak that he's been on versus Breece Hall looking like a kid that is on fire, ready to show the league what he can do? He had 2 catches for almost 100 yards or was 100 yards. I think it was 97 97 rushing yards and 100 receiving yards. I don't remember. Breece Hall was really awesome last week. I think I'd still take Josh Jacobs, though. I'd rather have Josh Jacobs rest of the season.
I came on this show 2 weeks ago and was like, stop disrespecting Josh Jacobs. Your running back does not need to be your soulmate. This is the same argument. Breece Hall had wonderful buzz over the summer. Stop with the confirmation bias. It's great. You got the confirmation in your bias of drafting him high in the 4th round probably over the summer. He's doing wonderful things. Josh Jacobs just always gets this kind of narrative surrounding. I think it's because he messed with people on Instagram a couple seasons ago, and now everybody's still a little bit angry at him. But I feel like we have to look at opportunity share here. And Josh Jacobs has managed 5 catches for 3 straight games. There is clearly an intention to get and keep him involved regardless of game script for the Raiders. His opportunity share is 84%. That's RB3. Breece Hall's currently 54.8%. That's RB27. Volume is king, and Jacobs clearly has all of it attached to him right now.
100%. And the way that they're utilizing him, the way that he looks, I mean, everything about Josh Jacobs. And Breece Hall is super excited about what the future is going to be with him and what he's going to be able to do in this league. But Josh Jacobs right now is the guy that if I'm choosing between the two, I want. All right, a little bit of breaking news based on that Tua and Jalen Waddle question that we had from Brian. Skylar Thompson officially going to get the start this week for the Miami Dolphins. Even if Teddy Bridgewater clears the concussion protocol, he will be the backup for this game to Skylar Thompson. So now we know. With that being said, Liz, that's a little bit different maybe for Jalen Waddle, or are you still trusting the talent that is Jalen Waddle? If he just gets the ball in his hands, he can take it 80 yards with his legs. Like, he doesn't need a whole lot.
We've also seen Tyreek Hill not 100% healthy, right? So one of these, there could be some slack picking up here. And again, now Mike McDaniel has time to prepare for Skylar Thompson. The opposing defense, though, probably not as much tape avail on this 7th round pick, right? So I'm still going to be bullish on Waddle, though I'd manage my expectations, right? Maybe I drop him to like my wide receiver 13 instead of keeping him around 11 or 10.
Sure, right. But you're looking within a tier. He's still a startable wide receiver for all of us from that standpoint. It's too good to have on your bench from that standpoint. Tua Tagovailoa is going to start throwing this week. We'll see how things progress for Tua and this Dolphins offense. So that's something to be able to keep in mind. But Liz, thank you so much for joining us. I love being able to do this with you. Where can people, I say this every week, everyone should know, but where can people follow you on Twitter? And what else do you do here at ESPN? Just in case you just tuned into Fantasy Focus today, what else do you do so that people can find you?
Well, you can find me on all the socials at Liz Loza _FF. And let's see, I do a props article, 4 of the 5, it's 5 props that pop every Saturday that comes out, and 4 of those, including a ladder for Gabe Davis, hit last week. So feeling pretty good, though you're only as good as your last call. So we'll see what happens this week. We do the Fantasy Improv Together article, and then this show I'm going to be in studio this week, actually, this coming Sunday.
Seriously? You're going to be here? Oh, that'll be so much fun. We get to work together in real life. This will be cool. All right. Well, now I'm pumped. I hope your Wednesdays is as exciting as mine is right now. All right, that's going to do it for Liz and I. We will be back tomorrow, Thursday. Me, Field, and Mike Clay breaking down everything you know for Thursday Night Football, wide receiver, cornerback matchups. We're going to get it all for you. Plus, CSS, DFS. Get your daily fantasy fix. We love you guys. Be good to each other. We'll see you tomorrow.